Greetings and welcome again to the Gaming Codex, the show where I try to explain to you all the various terms used within video games and the video games industry. And today's term is the GPU. And what exactly would that be? Well, according to the general definition, a GPU or a graphics processing unit is a specialized electronic circuit designed to rapidly manipulate and alter memory to accelerate the creation of images in a frame buffer intended for output to a display device. It's the thing that's kind of basically in every computerized device you own that has a screen attached to it. The GPU is necessary to create the image. It's necessary to modify it. It's necessary to do basically anything with it. An exception would be probably the things that use those small LCD numerical displays. I don't believe those specifically require a dedicated GPU and can just get the on-off signals for the pins of the LEDs just directly from the CPU or whatever other thing is connected to that small LED display. GPUs are the idea of a component dedicated to processing images that's accompanying a system that also has other functions than just outputting that image, is many decades old. It is ancient. GPUs have gone through many iterations, from only being able to slightly manipulate 2D graphics to making vector graphics to giving us the first glimpse of 3D, to the rise and fall of 3D effects in Voodoo, and to the present. But the word itself, the acronym itself, the GPU, the name, wasn't actually used up until around 1999 when it was coined by Nvidia with the GeForce 256. They called it that because it was one single circuit capable of generating, manipulating, rendering, basically do anything needed for an image. ATI would then go on to call their devices VPUs, visual processing units, for a while, and then kind of giving up because GPU was more catchy. Now, depending on what generation of GPU you're looking at, you will not just see a simple device made for rendering out 3D images or 2D images. What you have here is a very large and usually quite powerful parallel computer capable of doing many things other than just graphics. You have integrated video processing units capable of decoding and even encoding different kind of media, such as the H.264 codec, the H.265 codec, the VP9 codec, things that would usually require CPU time or even GPU time to actually get rendered, to actually get decoded, translated into something that your screen can display. But at the core of the GPU is usually a whole bunch of stream processors, which are like mini CPUs, but they're not CPUs, they're processors capable of doing stuff. You tell them what to do and they do it. And there's thousands of them, which is why GPUs also make great compute accelerators, because all those stream processors can do stuff that a simple CPU just cannot do efficiently enough, especially when it comes to small tasks that need to be done really fast in large numbers. And the GPU doesn't have just that. The ones used for compute basically only have that, but you also have texture mapping units, which, handle anything to do with textures, like scaling them, moving them, doing stuff to them. And you also have the render output units, which kind of handle the turning all that 3D data into a 2D image that will then go to your screen. This is the final step, so stuff like anti-aliasing gets mushed into here. And then it goes to the frame buffer, which is where frames basically lounge around until the display can actually show them. Now, what is the popular definition of a GPU? Well, that would be the big graphics card that's in the computer. Not actually correct. Not entirely correct. The GPU is just the chip, like the circuitry that handles the actual image manipulation, generation stuff, calculation. The graphics card is the GPU along with the memory, along with the power management VRM, along with the graphical outputs, along with usually a cooler maybe, something like that, that's on a support card and that you plug into your PC. That is the graphics card, that big thing. The GPU is a small part of it. which is why you will see that GPU being used in multiple different video cards. Some are for gaming, some are for compute, some are for doing, well, basically those are the main two applications, because compute sort of encompasses stuff that you will do with a computer that doesn't actually require gaming. You know, stuff like calculating things and encoding video using the GPU, accelerating all sorts of applications that need more performance to actually get running properly, like editing and encoding very high fidelity video, and so on. While a GPU can only have one manufacturer, I mean, only AMD can make AMD Radeon GPUs, only Nvidia can make GeForce GPUs, only Intel can make the integrated GPUs in their processors. Video cards themselves, they can be made by quite a lot of other people because they get the GPUs from AMD, they get them from Nvidia, and then they put them in their video cards. They can't really do much to actually modify the GPU. It comes like what it's gonna be in the end from the factory, from Nvidia, from AMD, but they can tweak it a bit. They can give it better power management, they can give it better memory, they can give it different outputs, better cooling, and they can try and see exactly which of those GPUs is the best performing one, so that they will use them for more expensive graphics card. And by that I don't mean that they have to see, oh, is this a 1070 or a 1080? No. I mean, they take a 1080, like a GeForce 1080 GPU. Well, the GPU isn't actually called 1080, that's kind of my mistake. The GPU for the 1080 is called the GP104. They take those GPUs and see which ones can handle more power, can reach higher frequencies and be more stable and kind of have better performance. This happens, like this variation happens because the GPUs are built on giant, well not giant, but big enough circular silicon wafers. And the closer to the center a GPU is when it's being printed out, the more accurate the process will actually be. The ones towards the edge aren't usually always all that great. Some of them don't even work properly. There tend to be quite a lot of failures in chip production, especially now since we're moving to extreme ultraviolet, which is going to let us make 7nm scale, in quotation marks, components, which still doesn't have a very good output ratio. But that's the general idea of it. Better GPUs go into more expensive graphics card, like Gainward has the gold samples, the goes like hell samples, you know, the more expensive ones that are certified to be a bit more powerful than the other ones, even though it's the same GPU, the exact same, exact memory, exact everything. But some of them are just better by the flukes inherent in the process through which they were made. Now, what is the marketing definition of a GPU? Well, it's something you'll upgrade constantly so that we don't actually do any optimization. Now, to be fair, when that guy from Ubisoft said this, he's sort of taken out of context a bit and sort of retracted later, but it isn't actually wrong. There is a kind of noticeable mindset in the gaming industry that, oh yeah, we could probably optimize this, make it run a bit better, do what id Software did, what Doom 4 that runs amazingly well on basically anything, even a potato with a VGA port can run it, but we won't. So we'll give you stuff like Deus Ex Mankind Divided, which runs horribly and honestly does not warrant that kind of performance, especially since it still isn't a game that can render out, well, the engine can't render out any reflections at all, even though the game from 2000 could. I'm sure they were fake, but still, it could do it. In the past couple of years, the GPU has been basically the only thing you actually need to upgrade for games to run better on your system. CPUs really have not had much noticeable improvement, at least in the Intel side, since Sandy Bridge. We're just getting close now with Coffee Lake, 7 years later, to something that can be called a reason to upgrade. And that's only because the number of cores went up. The actual per core performance is, yeah, it's better, but kinda stagnated for a long time. It still is. But GPU performance has skyrocketed in the same amount of time. That is incomparable. What a GPU can do now versus what a GPU could do back then, there is just no contest. And developers have done their best sometimes to make full use of the power of these new GPUs. So yeah, you kinda do need an upgrade, and sometimes no amount of optimization can actually get the game to run properly on an older GPU. Sometimes. Other times it's not a priority, because actually spending the time to optimize the game to run better on a system would require the publisher to pay the developer for the time to actually get people to work on that problem, and they usually don't. Which is why sometimes you actually see the developers of the graphics card, NVIDIA and AMD, do the optimizations in the driver, leading to bloated, decrepit, horrible drivers that are just too big and will oftentimes start failing, which is why we shifted to DirectX 12 and Vulkan, or we should, still haven't, but maybe we will soon. On account of those not needing that kind of optimization, which is going to be a good thing. Well, it is if the developers actually do it themselves, which they won't, sometimes. So closes this Gaming Codex. Come back next time and we will talk about something related to the GPU. Goodbye.